Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 251. I can't believe it. Presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan's 65-step creative process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven, CEO of Marshall Communications, and keynote speaker, which is part of my new repertoire of services. I want to welcome you, and I want to welcome my guests today, Paula and Derek Slayton of Trampoline Design.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
It's great to have you. So Paula Slayton brings more than 20 years of business management to her work at Trampoline. She ensures that accounts run smoothly through direct communication and a keen understanding of the balance that exists between projects and budgets. And that is very important in marketing because those budgets can and projects can sometimes run away from you. Her management of Glens Falls Hospital, Glens Falls National Bank and Trust Company, Serious Fun, Double H Ranch, and Vail Resorts demonstrates her ability to navigate corporate and institutional layers while still reaching goals and managing budgets and deadlines. That's another important aspect of marketing.
I get all the hard work.
Clients love her down-to-earth approach and accessibility. Derek oversees the creative process and manages projects through to completion. From creative strategy to the development of dynamic visual elements, Derek keeps projects on time and precise. Leveraging 25 years of design and communication, Derek's finesse has been used to guide the city of Oneonta, town of Newcomb, and Paul Smith's College, those are all over in the state of New York, through initiatives ranging from name changes and rebrands, which is a big deal, to comprehensive plans and campaign strategy. His attention to detail is unparalleled. He is masterful with gathering feedback and building consensus in order to keep projects on track, on message, and on budget. A brand specialist and design perfectionist, he helps to tap into unique selling points. So Derek, we'll start with you. Tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Well, getting out of college in the 90s was a really tough thing because there were no jobs to be had. Starting with, was able to land a job at some printing companies, a couple different printing companies, learning that process. Onto a newspaper, a daily. So in the advertising department, as we worked, we had daily deadlines. So learned the getting to the core of something on deadline really quickly. So that helped kind of gain this knowledge of not only the region, but how advertising works in the print industry, and learning what I learned from printers. I got that and ended up with that background. And finally broke into the marketing world into a sort of small creative agency where there was a variety of clients and I was a graphic designer. So, and that's where I met our now business partner to start Trampoline.
All right. And what year did you start Trampoline?
2003.
So 20 years.
20 years ago, yeah.
20 years.
Significant. Yeah. So Paula, tell us about your career and how you got into advertising in the first place.
So my path is very windy. I also graduated from Keene State with a degree in elementary education and psychology and have yet to step into a classroom to teach. Like Derek said, it was hard to find a job. I took a job as a receptionist in a medical practice Ended up staying there for 23 years,
Wow.
all the way to business management. Got my nursing degree, assistant in the OR. And just about as I was getting my real feet under me for being in the operating room, trampoline was taking off, and we were able to bring me on full time. So I bring a little bit of my medical background. I bring some of my psych degree for sure,
Yeah.
and even my elementary degree when dealing with staff sometimes. So that's where I come from.
That's awesome. So you went to college together at Keene State.
We did. We were college sweethearts for the second half of our college years.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so we'll be married 30 years.
30 years.
30 years this
Wow.
year.
Mhm.
Wow. So a lot
Long
to
time.
celebrate. So as an agency, what would you say is your competitive edge?
This is a good question. I would say our competitive edge is our staff. We take a lot of pride in our mission and our company guideline of family first and an appropriate work-life balance, and have found that the happier your employees are, the better they do on their work. And every one of our employees puts 100%, if not more, into the work that they do, and have so much pride in the product that whatever they show to a client going out has been thought through, has been streamlined, has gotten feedback, and is just the best product out there. And we're really proud of our staff. And we take a lot of interns and turn them into tramps and keep them as long as we can, because it's like a family at Trampoline.
Yeah, and I think that what we tend to focus on is tourism, hospitality, destination marketing, healthcare is another one, higher education is another one, and we chose not to be specialists in any one thing. We do tend to focus on those industries as well as some not-for-profits. So having staff so passionate about what we actually market, skiing, for example, working for ski resorts, we have skiers and snowboarders on staff. Working for some nonprofits like the Adirondack Council, we have hikers and walkers and outdoor fitness enthusiasts. So those industries, where we have staff so passionate, that's a connection I think that's very hard to get anywhere else,
Right.
And it makes us, I think, special when we have the passion behind what it is we're marketing, who those we're working with.
I think that's when we all first met, and we realized we specialize in a lot of the same niches.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, I had come out of the ski industry myself.
Absolutely.
And I think we found that our two agencies complemented each other in that way.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. And, I think we do a really good job at choosing clients that do things that matter to our team and to us as people and to us as a company. The nonprofits we pick are the Adirondack Council and the Adirondack Foundation and the Nature Conservancy and Double H Ranch, who provides services for children with life-threatening illnesses. And I enjoy working with hospitals because community hospital and healthcare is so important. So we do a really good job at Trampoline of partnering with clients that matter to us.
Yeah.
So that's our competitive edge.
And to the community.
And to the
too.
community for
Yeah.
sure.
So you're New York based. However, you do have a home here in Maine, or a couple homes here in Maine.
We do.
So you've been doing some work here in Maine as well.
We do. I have my mom and dad live up in Bangor. My daughter lives in Bath. We have a place down on the peninsula in Phippsburg. And the ultimate goal for Trampoline will be to have full speed 2 offices. So we're in the process of making those moves, and loved connecting with you, because if you live in Maine and you don't know Nancy, then you don't really live in Maine. So.
Or she hasn't found you yet.
Right.
But she will. So rebranding is a big deal for an organization or a company. How do you know when it's time to rebrand?
I think that traditionally, a lot of times, the situation comes up where there's a leadership change or a transition.
Yeah.
There are times when a new service or product is offered that maybe takes the company to a different position in the marketplace. Those are typically times that you'd see a rebrand happening to reflect that. But I think now with social being so prominent and the marketplace being so different, so finicky, it's more like when your audience is not talking about you, when people aren't coming to you, when the phone's not ringing, there may be some other things going on where you need to kind of step up and see what's going on. Competition is fierce. They may be stepping on some of your territory. So it's important to know, your position in the marketplace, because if that's changed, that's an ideal time to maybe look at your strategy, brand strategy, and if that is going to take something of a different look or a different direction, it should be reflected. So
Right.
I would add to that, you really have to look inward, because the truth is your brand is your promise, and then your ability to deliver on that promise. So you have to keep looking inward to make sure that the promise you're making that you say you can do still holds water a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. And are you able to deliver on that? Has your staff changed? Has your area of interest changed? Has the economy changed? So making sure that you're constantly evaluating what you're putting forth for your brand and you're delivering on that promise. If you're not, you just need to do the work to figure out what that promise change needs to be and how you can stand behind it. And that's a perfect time to rebrand.
Yeah, I love thinking about a brand as a promise.
It is. And I think we'll get into that when we talk about what is a brand.
Yeah, well,
the language of branding.
Yeah, so that's the next question. Tell us about the language of branding.
it's almost its own. The vernacular is sometimes it's buzzwords and buzz speak, but the terminology can be very different, but yet the same. So, for example, when I say, do you have a new logo? Do you have a new mark? Do you have a new brand identity? Some people think that's the same thing.
The same, right.
It could be completely different. So there's that terminology that gets thrown around that sometimes is it's hard to kind of figure out. Even for somebody coming from the marketing side, it's like, what is a mark versus a logo? So I think that the bottom line is trying to figure out with whom you're working with is, what does that mean?
Right. It's your audience, isn't it?
It's your audience.
And I'll say on the budget side, it's the client, because we want to make sure if the client is asking for a new brand, are they asking for a logo? Does it include a tagline? Do they really just want their brand refreshed? So bringing it down, getting rid of all the market speak and saying, okay, at the end of this, you're going to have this as your brand, your logo, your refresh, your brand date, whatever we're going to call it. Let's have that mutual agreement that this is what we're talking about. So
Did you just say brand date?
A brand date.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard that.
Yeah, add it to the list, because I think if you ask people
What is that?
it's not a full rebrand. It's you're putting a Band-Aid on their brand.
I love that.
So why would you bring a brand refresh
Yeah.
versus a rebrand? There could be some very different things in there, and so.
Yeah, because I think some small, tiny brands think they're going to be like McDonald's serving billions and billions. And it's like a brand like that's worldwide and is targeted pretty much like at anybody who eats. Well, eats that kind of food. But anyway, that's like a big brand promise. Like, we're going to serve everybody who just drives through any of our stores versus a small little health food store that's in a small town that's only going to serve a few hundred people.
Yeah, and it does all come back to being able to deliver on your promise. So you can fix the brand-aid, make it look pretty or better and work harder for you. But as a brand, you have to do the work on the back end to make sure you're delivering on that promise.
It's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig.
Yep.
That's still going to be a pig, but a lipstick on it.
Yep. And that lipstick's going to rub off at some point.
I'll give a quick example of where it may veer off the path a little bit when the language of branding works and maybe when it doesn't work. There was a brewery we were working with where they were looking for a brand refresh. And as we researched and started doing the prep work and got to know them a little bit more, it became more of a case of, we don't know if they're really ready for this. We're getting some things coming up where the language is, well, we want this, but they don't want that in their own organization. So as we went further and further to do the work, it became apparent that they just were not ready for a brand refresh or a rebrand. So it's sometimes a conversation that you have to have really all the time, that you have to have to make sure you're on the same page. On the flip side of that, we're working with a ski resort out west where they're looking for a brand strategy guide. So as they grow and expand, they want to know where they're headed so that they make key decisions the right way. We're a mountain that does this for these people. If we want a water park, is that the right project?
Right.
So we need this brand strategy guide to kind of help us call it the North
Or should we have a mountain bike park?
Right,
That's
right,
a big
exactly.
difference.
So
right?
very big difference. So
Yeah.
where does that lie? And we need kind of a document to help as our guiding, our sort of North Star document. So, and also in terms of language, their best ambassadors are their own employees, right? So they have an off season, they're out in the not on the mountain, and they're having conversations with friends, with family. So they kind of need a line to say where they work and sort of what their mission is if it comes to that. So they need, we call it elevator speech, right? When you're stuck in an elevator, you got 11 seconds to say who you are, what you do. So it gives their employees also some language that is common to everybody.
Right.
So you're not saying one thing and another employee is saying a different thing. Not exactly a script, it's more of a guideline to say, all right, this is, the type of area we are. This is who our audience is, and this is, why choose us. So
right.
That's when the language really kind of comes together. When everybody's on the same page, everybody's kind of taken from the same cue card and believing it. So that's language is very, as we know, very nuanced, and you got to kind of figure that out.
I call it singing from the same song sheet,
Yes.
or in church, the same hymnals.
That's a great way to put it.
Everybody
Yeah.
sings in harmony.
That's correct.
You might be singing a slightly different tune, but you want to be in harmony with everybody
Yes.
else.
Absolutely.
And
That's
you
a
know
great
when
way
you're
to put
not,
it.
right? You know when it's not.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to be back in a minute with more from Paula and Derek, but right now we're going to just hear a little bit about my friends at Sprague and Curtis Real Estate.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow, and so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients, so it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
Yeah, I want to thank my friends in Augusta at Sprague and Curtis Real Estate who made that video. And it's about what I call networking magic, because essentially when you meet a new person, first of all, you can't be all about like what's in it for me. You have to just be open to the possibilities, and magic can happen. Like it could result in a friendship, like we've become friends, or it could result in like a trip to Hawaii. You never know. They might invite you to go on the next trip. Or
Are you going to Hawaii?
no, but you never know. I'm open to the magic.
Today is the day in history. I read this morning that John Lennon had a chance meeting with Paul McCartney. Magic happened.
That is
So
networking.
it said, get out there and you never know what's going to happen.
And I bet they didn't call it networking, but still, it was magic.
It was
Yeah.
a garden party in London.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so-
Were they drinking tea?
Who knows?
That's awesome. So we're talking with Paula and Derek Slayton from Trampoline, and we've been talking a lot about advertising, but PR and advertising are kind of all part of the marketing mix, obviously. And we've been talking about the language of branding and identifying your target audience. And obviously the things that we can do with public relations complement everything that can be done with advertising and social media to strengthen that connection with your audience, both your current audience of what we might call brand ambassadors, but also growing that audience. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you're both on the same page, using the same language, and you know the client's goal, the end goal, it can be a beautiful, symbiotic relationship.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the R word, or recession, there's a possible recession coming down the line. And some people may say, oh, we better scale back because we can't spend any money on marketing right now. But why is it important to continue to spend money and invest during a recession?
So this is an excellent question. I would say that COVID was its own form of recession. And we learned a lot as a company, and a lot, I think, as humans during that 2.5 years felt like forever. But I was listening to a podcast recently, and he said, you'll be grateful you didn't flinch in a time of economic uncertainty. And I agree with that 100%. You can't take your foot off the gas. You don't know how long things are going to last. What you can do is work with your clients and with your staff on perhaps coming up with a different type of fuel to run the car. During the recession or during COVID, we have a lot of outdoor recreation clients, and their business stopped. We had clients cancel their contracts, pause their contracts. But what we found is we didn't cancel the relationship. They needed from us some reassurance. They needed patience from us. They needed us to be ready to pivot when the government said they could pivot. And by maintaining those relationships, we came out on the other side stronger. The minute you take your foot off the gas, you're behind. And guess what? There are competitors who are going to jump right in and take that space. So it is important. And I think it's important on the agency side to understand what the client is feeling, because it's scary. And these clients have budgets, they have people to answer to. So it's upon the agency to come up with a way to accomplish some goals during these difficult times.
Yeah. And I would also add that it's very important to keep your relationships going, again, to stay in touch with your network, whether it's through email marketing or your social media.
Or handwritten notes.
Handwritten notes in the mail. Yeah, exactly.
Handwritten notes.
Or special events where you have client appreciation events, but whatever.
On the handwritten notes, I'll share, we just, it's our 20-year anniversary, so we did a poster that had all of our logos from the last 20 years. And we sent them to previous clients with handwritten notes of, hey, it was great working with you 12 years ago or whatever. But you can't underestimate the power of reaching out and of handwritten notes.
Yeah,
I think,
right.
for sure.
It is really quite amazing how it really makes you stand out from everybody else who does the same thing you do, because hardly anybody, just don't know how to write, what to write, how to buy a stamp at the post office.
And in that same vein, I think print is coming back. Like everybody stayed away from print. Everything was digital. That was the future. Everything's digital. But every now and again, we get a print piece in the mail, and it stops you in your tracks because there's not a lot of people doing that.
Right.
So,
and I know you guys are big on postcards. You include a print postcard with a lot of your campaigns.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. It's almost going back to retail from everybody's buying online. Well, retail's around because that experience of the see, feel, and touch is so important. And I think that translates to a handwritten note or a piece of printed communication. I think everybody gets email fatigue after a while, and you got to kind of get a feel for when that happens, because it feels good to get a piece of mail that's kind of personalized for you.
Exactly. Oh, totally.
And if you get something in the mail, if you have somebody's business card or you have something that's a postcard that has business information on the back, which one are you more likely to keep?
Oh yeah, right.
Stick it on your fridge.
Exactly.
And stay top of mind.
Oh yeah, I keep them on my desk. So custom versus stock imagery. I mean, there's a lot of free stock photos out there that you can just grab and put on your website or on your social. But why is it perhaps better to have custom photography and video?
Well, first part of that is stock, is what it says. It's something that is off the shelf that anybody could grab. So
Right.
so I think the danger is if you're relying on something like that, not only most of the times you need a subscription.
Right.
So I mean, I've seen pieces of communication that come and people are just driving stuff off online with the watermark, with the different, like they're not even supposed to use it because it has a watermark.
Yeah, right.
So, but even then, when you're there is a use for stock. There is a place that we feel stock has, and it's almost to for us as a company, we're filling gaps. It's almost like missing puzzle pieces. But the second part of that question is, why is custom important? I think because your business owner, you're unique. You started the business for a reason, and probably one of those reasons is you feel you can do it better than anybody.
Right. Exactly.
In that industry. So shouldn't you have imagery to reflect that?
Right.
So that's uniqueness, that's specialty. So that's when a custom solution from an agency or a freelancer is really that important. And so, yeah, again, stock has its place, but it's pieces and bits for us anyways. And really got to be careful of overdoing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think of Sugarloaf and how, so many of the Lyft attendants have been there for so many years and they all have their unique personalities. And if you tried to do an ad and just had some random Lyft operator from, XYZ resort, Sugarloafers would like, from
revolt.
yeah, exactly. There'd be a revolution. Be like, we want to have our favorite guy, the guys that we know from the Super Quad. We don't want to have some random chairlift operator.
And I think as an agency, clients will sometimes hear custom and they'll be like, oh, well, I can't afford that. Can we just do something? I think what we offer at Trampoline is solutions. So understanding budget, what can we do on our side to make sure what we're presenting them is custom, while, like Derek said, maybe using a piece of something that isn't completely custom. And I can't go into detail because that's the secret sauce of Trampoline.
Yeah.
But we do understand that there's sometimes that, if somebody says custom and automatically a client thinks it's not for them, but we would advocate that on the backside of doing something custom, your return on investment is going to come.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, my next question is, what is the difference between selling when you're excited about selling versus selling when you're desperate for sales?
If you're desperate, they're going to hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
So, and this kind of goes hand in hand maybe with talk of recession, and even COVID, when people were scrambling to keep themselves in business. What we found at Trampoline, whether it's you're anxious about pitching a client, or you're desperate for new work, or you've never pitched this before, is to talk with a peer, talk with another partner. We always rehearse. We always talk about, we're going to do this. And in the case of desperate, that might just be Derek saying, you're using this word too much and it sounds, you need to change that word because you don't want to come across like that. But I think and it allows you to get that, whether it's anxiety or whatever, out and into the world, so that when you're actually presenting or you're actually selling, you have that kind of deep breath and you go about it without that desperation or that anxiety in your voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that comes back to the competitive edge question you were asking earlier. When you're passionate about what you're selling and excited, you don't really have to worry about it. There are times when, the roller coaster has you worrying and your heart palpitations at times as a business owner. But if you're genuinely excited about who you're working with and what you're selling, that comes through. It's like walking up to, if anybody plays poker, but
Do you play poker?
you're sitting at the table. You don't want to give away, what you're feeling, what you're holding.
Right, yeah. You have a poker face.
So people can sense it. People can sense your mood and your demeanor and your vibes. So
right.
You really have to dial it back a little bit and kind of just make sure you're excited about what it is you're selling.
Right. I always like to think in terms of energy, excitement, and enthusiasm, the 3 E's.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That translates well because people have a good sense of what they're getting back. Sometimes you don't know you're emanating that or giving that off, but people have a gut, and always say trust your gut, right? So,
yeah,
and be likable. I think just
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
relax and
People need to know,
Talk.
like, and trust you,
Yes,
right?
yes,
to
they
do
do.
to work with you.
yes, they do.
So we talked about this a little bit before, but how can PR and advertising work the best together to achieve the goals of the client?
That's a great question, because I think you said it earlier, it's all part of the, sort of the marketing landscape for a particular client. PR is, if you're sending a piece of information or broadcasting something, and it's going to go to a television station or TV stations, maybe the ad agency, hopefully they're in on that conversation. Maybe we're considering doing a commercial on that television station or that group of stations in a geographic area. If it's something of a service that you're touting in a certain area, maybe it's going to newspapers. Maybe we should think about advertising in that newspaper or group of newspapers. So it's all a concerted effort. I think that comes down to strategy. But having sort of the players at your table, client X, would be great to kind of bring everybody into the fold. So
Right.
you said it earlier, everybody's singing off the same hymn.
Yes,
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
Mhm. Communication and consistency, and form a relationship.
Right.
You're not adversaries. You're all working towards the same goal, which is what the client wants, and you're doing it to the best of their ability. And if you can't handle a certain service,
Right.
Trampoline does not have a PR arm.
Right.
You go to somebody who knows what they're doing, and you work collaboratively.
Right. Yeah.
It's the best
Relationships.
outcome for both agencies and for the client.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a book, a podcast, or an app that has been helpful to you in your life or in your career, and why?
So it took me a long time working at Trampoline to understand that there were resources out there with people going through and doing the same things that I'm doing. So as an entrepreneur, of course, you have that, I can do this, anything, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. But what I've realized recently, like really recently in the past 2 or 3 years, is that there are people out there who are going through the exact same thing that we are at any given time in the marketing space, and they have a wealth of knowledge on how to handle that. So my favorite podcast right now is twobobs.com, and it's Blair Enns and David C. Baker.
Oh yeah.
They are phenomenal. And David C. Baker gave a podcast for free talking about the pipeline and stuff being stuck in the pipeline as we come upon this R word. And how do you manage that? And it really, really touches my heart when professionals like that do a service for the community that they are talking to. It's just, and there were 500 people on that.
Wow.
And they were from around the world. And so that's my favorite.
Well, they know, I mean, they know that you're going to become a brand ambassador for them, like you just did, and you're going to tell other people. It will all come back around, but that's part of that magic too.
And there's no BS.
Exactly.
To just say, don't reply to an RFP if there are 7 other people replying.
Yeah, right.
It's not worth your time and your energy. If they can't tell you why they want you, if they can't tell you whether there's an incumbent, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
And it's hard. When you're in a roller coaster cash flow, you're sometimes grabbing at whatever, but it's nice to hear somebody say, don't do this, and here's why.
Yeah.
Your time is more valuable doing X.
Right. Yeah.
For me, as an entrepreneur and business owner, I think it's one of the first podcasts I listened to getting into podcasts was How I Built This.
Oh yeah.
with Guy
Guy
Raz.
Raz.
Yeah. And just the people he talks to and some of the questions. Good interviewer. But the people he interviews, like say the founder of Lululemon, I get things from that. Say that particular one, he talked about why is the logo the way it is on our clothing.
Yeah.
It's not even an L for Lululemon. It's completely different. So those things that I get from that podcast is really fun. You hear stories about the roller coasters they went through, the failures they went through over and over. So, when sometimes you get in those ruts, it's good to hear that, you're not the only one that went through that. So
exactly.
I love that one. But I'm interested. We're on a podcast now. You must have been inspired by a couple podcasts.
Well, I went to a workshop on content marketing back in 2017. That was really pivotal for my whole career in life. And I just learned about the whole concept of using content to market yourself and build a personal brand. I also went through personal branding certification and realized that, with the years of experience that I've had in public relations, and that did translate into personal branding, because my first personal branding client, so to speak, was at Sugarloaf, this guy, Paul Shipper, who skied every single day for like 20 years. He never missed a day of skiing. And he wasn't even a very good skier. He was pretty interesting. He's passed. Okay. He rest in peace. he knew that. He was pretty intermediate, but he was so determined. He had been an airline pilot for American Airlines, and there had been an accident that the airline deemed he was not physically capable of flying anymore, but he thought he was. So they forced him to retire. And this was kind of like his vendetta, like, I'll show you, American Airlines. I'm going to ski at Sugarloaf in Maine every day for 20 years. And he had pneumonia. He'd still drag himself out there. He had his son went to the Culinary Institute of America, and he had to go to the graduation, but he went and skied at midnight, and then anyway, I started helping promote his story through the media, and it started with a very local, like weekly, then daily, and then we got the Portland Press Herald, then the Boston Globe, then the New York Times, then People magazine did his story twice, then Good Morning America sent a live crew up to do his 1,000th day of skiing. So for me, that was like the perfect combination of promoting skiing and a personal brand. And it got me really excited about the possibilities out there, again, of
story.
PR and personal branding. Yeah. Paul died of cancer. It's horrible. He probably died about 10 years ago. And the New York Times did a full page obituary on him. And Paul loved publicity. Like he kind of loved me too, because he knew that I would help him get publicity. But I remember kind of talking to Paul in heaven and saying, "Oh, Paul, if you could see this obituary, you would have been so happy."
Did you send it to American Airlines?
I didn't do that. I should have. Yeah. No, his son Jeff is still alive. His son Jeff is my age, and we do talk pretty regularly about. And Jeff has this whole library of all the media clips and all of the paraphernalia and memorabilia from. So that was sorry.
Oh,
no, more of a response.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's always fun to hear what sparks you and what's the impetus that pushes you to that next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
We are all over social, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Design Tramp on all those handles, but Trampoline Design for LinkedIn. Thank you for the banner. And then our website, trampolinedesign.com, is a great way to get in touch with us.
Great.
Yeah.
Or a handwritten letter.
Yeah, handwritten letter. You can find their mailing address on their website.
Yeah, we have a snail mail address.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you both for joining me. It's kind of hot here, it's a hot summer day, so it's kind of ironic we're talking about skiing.
I know. I can't wait already.
You forget about the heat for a minute there.
Yeah. But I hope you have a great day, everybody in PR Maven Nation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.